My name is Simon Rusnak. Hard to believe, but the week-long celebration of chamber music that is Agassiz Festival is quickly coming to a close. Throughout the week, we've welcomed a number of guests into the Classic 107 studio, and we conclude the series of interviews in a conversation with Catherine French, a member of the renowned Boston Symphony Orchestra since 1994. The Canadian-born violinist has established herself as a versatile and accomplished soloist and chamber musician, in addition to her distinguished orchestral career. Catherine, welcome to Winnipeg's Classic 107.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So despite calling Boston home for the past nearly 3 decades, you're rather familiar with the city of Winnipeg. Can you remind listeners how that is?
Absolutely. So in the late 80s, my parents lived here for a few years. I was already away at college, but I did spend some time here with them, which was great. And then in 1997, I came here in the fall and spent the orchestral season as a member of the Winnipeg Symphony. So I lived here for almost a year in the late 90s. So it's been really nice to come back to Winnipeg and reconnect with some friends and see some old familiar faces and places as well.
What do you remember about your time here back in 97?
It was a great year for me. I enjoyed the orchestra tremendously. And as I was mentioning to some friends last night, at that time, there were a number of violinists in the orchestra here who I'd grown up with in Calgary. A lot of them have gone on to other orchestras, other jobs, other career paths, some of them. But for us, it was a bit of a homecoming that year. So it was really a special time for me.
And that would have been under the late, great Bramwell Tovey, right? Would have been music director here at the time?
Absolutely was. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience to spend that time with the maestro. Yes, he's very sorely missed.
So you were born in Victoria. You studied at Indiana before a master's at Juilliard. You won 3 of the major Canadian soloist competitions in the Canadian Music Competition, the CBC Radio Competition, and the National Competitive Festival of Music. Was it right after that you landed the gig in Boston?
It was right after I finished my master's at Juilliard. So I was in my second year of that program when I auditioned in Boston.
So one of the most prestigious orchestras in North America, part of the historic Big Five. So I have to ask, Catherine, what's it like being a member of the Boston Symphony?
Well, it's great. I mean, the short answer is it's great, and I've always felt very lucky to be there. I think that as a young person taking auditions, you don't necessarily think that your first job will be your last job, but when you are lucky enough, as I was, to get into the orchestra. As I say, I wasn't as young as, we have colleagues now coming in 20 and 21. I wasn't that young, but I was inexperienced anyway in the ways of professional orchestras. So I do feel fortunate that happened to me at that point. And it's almost 30 years now that I've been there, and I've always been grateful for the job. It's a wonderful job.
We opened this conversation with a little bit of music played by the BSO, led by Maestro Seiji Ozawa, who's the music director who hired you, right?
He did. And he was there for the first few years of my tenure there. And he was, I would say, a little reluctant to hire me because of my lack of experience. Perhaps he had other reasons as well, but he decided to take a chance on me, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, what an absolute legend, and what an opportunity presented. I mean, like you say, it's been a career, and a career that continues. Now, you, of course, are not just an orchestral player. You're also an avid player of chamber music throughout your career, and it's the reason you're here. It's the reason you've returned to the city to perform as part of Agassiz. Remind me, have you been part of the festival before?
Yes, I was here I think it's about 22 years ago. So I said I must have made a great impression since they're having me back so soon. I'm kidding, of course. But Paul Marlane, the director of the festival, is an old friend of mine, and it's really tremendous what he does bringing this festival to Winnipeg, especially now since he doesn't live here. He has to do a lot of the work remotely, which I'm sure only complicates things for him, but he does all the programming, and he makes it look easy, which I know it is not. So I think it's really exciting, this this festival, all the many facets of it, all the different kinds of programming that's going on. And I really feel like there's something for everybody going on at Agassiz this week.
Yeah, there really is. And I mean, we've spoken to the diversity throughout the week and in interviewing some of the great guest artists. Of course, many of the local, incredibly talented musicians who also participate in this festival.
Absolutely.
It really is like a showcase of chamber music here in the city.
Oh, definitely.
Yesterday evening, you had the opportunity to perform in the Grieg Triptych, all three of his sonatas for violin, of which you performed the middle number, G major, 1867, I think it was written.
I think that's right.
These are all well-known, well-loved works in the repertoire. I'm curious, what was it like for you to not only play one of the sonatas, but hear the other two played by your Agassiz colleagues over the course of one evening?
I thought it was brilliant programming, actually. And I'm not generally a fan of an all-anything program, but this was a program to highlight folk music. Mm-hmm. And I think that choosing these works of Grieg was really a brilliant idea of Paul's. And it's so interesting to hear them all at once, to see in real time the development of Grieg as he is sort of becoming the person he was meant to be, the composer he was meant to be. And the first two sonatas, played by myself, as you said, and Carl Stobbe, with the wonderful pianist Paul Williamson, who I'm sure your listeners are very familiar with.
He's been on the show many times. What a talented guy.
What a talented and wonderful pianist he is. So those two sonatas were relatively early works of Grieg's. He was in his 20s, and then it was a full 20 years before he wrote the third one, which is arguably the most famous, the C minor. So to listen to that evolution of the sonata, I thought was very interesting. And the C minor, to me, perhaps the biggest takeaway I had was how orchestral it is, how massive in scope, and what a tour de force it is for both violin and piano. And it was a really exciting evening, I thought.
Broken up with some little intermezzi by Daniel Bolshoi, who was in studio yesterday with me.
Well, and Daniel just plays so beautifully. If you haven't had a chance to hear him, he's playing a recital today.
He sure is.
And can also be heard tomorrow. That's Saturday at 4, I believe. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he is so worth a trip. Absolutely.
You're back at it tonight,
We are.
an evening that explores the darker side in a concert titled Voodoo Dolls, named for a Jesse Montgomery work. Are you going to be performing in that number?
We're actually not. We had a slight program change. The Montgomery, if you haven't heard it, is an incredible piece. There are fantastic recordings of it to be listened to on YouTube and Spotify, and we were excited to play it. But we, as these things go, sometimes life gets in the way of art, and we just had a little bit of some hiccups this week with various things. So we are not playing that tonight, but the program has all sorts of great music on it, including the Rachmaninoff Piano Trio. And I'm playing a piece I've never played before, which I think is so beautiful, Piano Quartet by Frank Bridge, which is what a gorgeous piece that is. And there will also be the Benjamin Britten Oboe Fantasy for oboe and string trio tonight, which is also not a piece you hear every day, but if you are a fan of Benjamin Britten like I am, you will not want to miss it. It is so beautiful.
Yeah, Britten, student of Frank Bridge.
Absolutely.
And the very first of our interviews, we had Austis Valdemarsdottir in the studio, and
Yes.
she was also just kind of raving about this bridge and how much she was looking forward to being a part of.
It's
the
really
work
special.
Because, you don't get to hear his music all the time. We've heard his miniatures performed before by the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra here in town.
Great.
But to hear some of his chamber music, again, just a unique opportunity. And I think that's part of the joy of festivals, right? You get to explore music that you wouldn't otherwise.
Absolutely, and also the part of the challenge and the brilliance of Paul's programming is bringing all these various facets together in these coherent programs. It's really terrific.
So tomorrow, as you mentioned, the final day of the festival, another busy one for you, performing in the Boccherini, I'd imagine.
Yes, we are, with Daniel.
With Daniel Bolshoi, and he was glowing about that work yesterday. It's just such a wonderful number.
It is, and it's so much fun to play with guitar. It's not something that I have done much of, but we're having a really good time with it. And he's such a great musician that it's so easy to play with him. We're really enjoying that.
And then tomorrow evening, the finale for the future, another very diverse program with some well-known Germans in Clara Schumann and Johannes Brahms, plus some Astor Piazzolla, in addition to Azerbaijani composer Ferengiz Ali Zadeh, and then West African composer Hawa Kase Madi Diabate. the latter two composers both working with the Kronos Quartet to
Yes.
make those works happen.
Yes.
Which works are you going to be performing in?
I'm in both the Diabate pieces tomorrow night, and those are one of them. I only clap in it. So
What?
if you'd like to hear my clapping debut, you'll have to come tomorrow night.
Oh, that is fascinating. Yeah.
And they're really fun, sort of groovy pieces with all these great sort of folk idioms in them, and it's been a lot of really enjoyable music making to put those together.
I feel like it's a wonderful way to cap off a festival too, when you just sum it up in enjoyable music making. And I feel like that enjoyment is almost transmuted from players to audience. You can feel when everyone's having a good time up on the stage there. And I think, again, this is the joy of Agassiz Festival. So, Catherine, I want to thank you so much for coming by the studio this morning and telling us a little bit more about your Agassiz experience.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I hope everybody comes out to the rest of the concerts for the rest of the weekend. I think they'll have a great time.